Hi, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins, and welcome to Financial Lovemaking. This is where Tia Brown and I get together and we talk about love, life, money, and everything in between. How you doing today, Tia?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing very well, very well. I hope the weather's nice in New York.
It's cold. It's very cold. Excuse me, I woke up this morning and I was all excited to go outside, and then I went out and I could see my breath. And that's not because it was kicking. It's because it's freezing.
You know that you can see your breath in the summertime too, because it's always hotter than the temperature around you. Well, I wanted to, speaking of people just doing some really interesting, stinky things. I noticed Beyonce's father's child's mother. We're not going to say the term baby mama today. We'll say that for another day.
Okay.
Her name's Alexandra Wright, and she is really upset because she recently was evicted from her home, and there were actually pictures to show this, right? She's crying on her driveway. There's pictures of her moving boxes out of her house, and so she's been sort of making this very public and really appealing to Beyonce to come and meet her baby brother and to kind of help her out of her situation. And so for people that don't know the background, those two started off, she started off by having an affair with Beyonce's father while he was still married, right? And got pregnant, and now she feels that the child isn't being adequately taken care of. Did you see any of that by chance?
I definitely did. And the issue in this situation financially is that she had a child support payment, I believe, of like $12,000 a month, and then it was reduced. So she was spending at the $12,000 a month rate, and now that the payment amount was reduced, she can no longer afford to sustain her lifestyle. In addition, what I read is that because the amount was adjusted retroactively, she won't be getting child support for a few more months. I definitely read it, and it's disappointing on two fronts. Number one, I'm an avid believer in family planning. There's no way that we can determine whether, we're married and, a relationship will stay together and last. But there is something to be said for going into, the whole family process with having two willing parties who have a financial plan, a love plan, a life plan, right? So we know, number one, that didn't happen there because it's always been an issue around the paternity of this baby and Matthew knows participating in the relationship. Second of all, once you have a child, the child is the responsibility of the parents. And I think publicly trying to embarrass Beyonce for not saving this woman from her own situation and saving this child is just not only manipulative, it's actually morally incorrect. It is not Beyonce's responsibility to take care of this woman who obviously spent poorly when she did have a surplus of money coming into her household. And that's the other thing. Most people don't even get $2,400 a month. You were getting $12,000 a month passive income, meaning you were doing nothing. It doesn't take $12,000 to raise any child, right, a month. Even if they're in the best private school, have their own nanny. So in some ways she was being financially irresponsible. She thought she had a sugar daddy in Matthew Knowles, and it all backfired.
Well, I would argue definitely that having a baby with a wealthy man is probably not the best financial plan out there, right?
Not at all.
When you look at that amount, $12,000 a month, I think most normal people have a hard time identifying with the idea that someone would need that much money just to take care of a child. I mean, that's not just child support. That's mama support, uncle support, boyfriend support, cousin support. You're really supporting everybody in the household. And while I think that child support certainly makes sense, everyone should pay their child support, and that's what Matthew's doing. I mean, he's paying what he's legally obligated to pay her, and yet she's still kind of going above and beyond saying, no, this isn't what I signed up for. I expected to receive more. And from what I understand, she's not an uneducated woman. She actually has skills, and she's made her own money in the past. So, this idea that she is being so public, I think is at one level, it's interesting to even be public while dealing with Matthew when he is sort of doing what he's supposed to do within the confines of the law, but then to actually go after his daughter, who probably doesn't want any part of this, right? I mean, what daughter wants to be connected to her father's mistress's child? There's probably a lot of pain associated with Alexandra's existence. And so for her to just sort of, make it even worse by behaving this way in such a public fashion. I think it's really problematic. Now, in terms of financial lovemaking, and lessons that we can walk away with on this, because we see it all the time. We see this, what people will call baby mama, baby daddy drama happen all the time. A lot of it centers around money, and you're kind of the expert on this sort of thing in terms of relationship building and being smart about it. What financial lovemaking lessons do you kind of draw from this incident and how it's going down?
Well, before we go into the financial lovemaking lesson, I do want to make a very clear point. I don't think there's anything wrong, and I know we differ here, with a man paying a child support based on his income. Right? So there's something very different in saying that if you're a millionaire and you're obligated to pay 17% of your income for this child to have a quality of life that you can afford based on your income, that's fine. What I do think is an issue is that when a woman expects that child support income to be her livelihood income. And those are two different things. So, if it's enough money for you to live off of, if you have a strategy and it's not a requirement for you to live, but it is enough money for you to live, that's fine. But in no way is child support income supposed to be meant to take care of a woman. I think in terms of financial lovemaking, the biggest thing is at the end of the day, you are responsible for yourself, right? And I think that when it comes to money and love, there's always a great push in relationships for someone to come, and I talk about this a lot, to have that Prince Charming come and save you. And a lot of times that Prince Charming can take different forms. In this case, he's someone else's rich husband, right? But at the end of the day, when it comes to mixing money and the lessons that you've learned about money growing up, the only thing that works is having a plan for yourself that involves you providing for yourself. So I think that that's the only thing that is a major issue here, that women oftentimes think that a Prince Charming is going to come, scoop them off their feet, and there's going to be a happily ever after. The truth is, when it comes to love and romance, they are not forever intertwined. While Matthew and this woman were together, he might have made a lot of great promises to her about how he would keep her, especially when his money was rolling, right? Remember, at one point, he was managing Beyonce, so his income was significantly different. But now he's not. And you should always have a plan for yourself. And that's not just for women, that's for men also.
Yeah, I will have to argue. First of all, I would have to say I agree with everything you just said. And then second of all, I think we have to ask ourselves, when you are having a child with a married man, what makes you think he's going to be any more committed to you and your child as he is to the child and the woman he's married to, right? Obviously, Matthew wasn't thinking a whole lot about Tina and the kids when he decided to have the relationship with Alexandra. Now, mind you, we don't know what happened in that relationship. Sometimes people are just in dead marriages that are just dead in the water. And so all we see is the cheating, the so-called cheating that occurs. But from what I understand, he and Tina were not intimate anymore. They didn't have any closeness anymore. They were just sort of together in name only and not, really serving the function for each other and that a couple would serve. So in that situation, can you really, can we really dispute when someone decides to divorce or even decides to fill their needs somewhere else? I don't judge that.
Those are two different things, though. See, and I think that there's a big difference between saying that this relationship is no longer healthy, it's no longer meeting my needs, and cheating. And not to say that cheating is always the end of a marriage, but if you decide that your marriage is no longer working and you want to have a mistress, I think that that's wrong. I think that there are other options, and some of them are uncomfortable. Mostly it's financially uncomfortable because you know that when you sever that contract, there are going to be a lot of things changing. And I would imagine, and this is all conjecture on our part, that Matthew knew that once he severed ties with Tina, that would impact his financial relationship with his daughters, because he was also managing them, and they're all a team. That said, you still have to do the right thing, because at the end, when you don't, it bites you in the behind. And you decide to have a relationship with someone else. When a woman conceives, it's her choice whether or not she wants to have the baby. It's out of the man's hand. So I always suggest responsibility at the beginning, because if not, you'll be doing it all the way to the end. There's no exit plan once you're already in that situation. I'm sorry I interrupted. Go ahead, Boyce.
No, you really opened up a huge can of worms, first of all, because there is a huge debate over whether or not a man should have a choice once the child has been conceived, right? It's not a given that the man has no choice. It's a societal decision that men have no choice. But there are a lot of men who say, look, if it's my child inside of you, I should have some say in what happens afterward, whether it's me having a say in whether the child is born versus aborted, or if it's my say in terms of whether or not I want to participate financially in raising the child. Like I could say, look, you can have the baby. People have talked about this for what they call financial abortions. Look, if you want to go ahead and have this baby, that's your right. But if I decide I don't want anything to do with this child, then that's my right too. That we all have choice. We all have the right to choose.
Would you like my opinion on this topic?
Yes, I'm sure you're going to give it to me.
Since we're talking,
please go ahead.
I actually don't disagree with you on that point. I do think that parenting is a joint situation and that it should be made with both parties having full rights, understanding what they're embarking on. And I think the thing is, it's not only men who don't understand what it means. I think women don't fully understand what it means. Like, I think it's very easy for women to compartmentalize men into just the financial aspect. I don't need you. You'll just pay child support, or you could be a weekend daddy. When we know that childbearing is so much more than that. So I do think it needs to be a joint decision all the way. What I'm not for, however, is making a decision, changing your mind, making your decision and changing your mind. And that's the reason why creating legislation around something like that is such a challenge. Because you can say when a woman conceives, I don't want to participate, or the woman can say, I don't want you to participate. But we know that over the course of time, things change. So if you sever someone's financial obligation or parental rights and then they change their mind, what happens? That becomes emotionally a big thing, not just for both parties, but for the child. That's why handling the situation up front is the best way to do it. Protect yourself, and women need to have a very realistic perspective on what parenting is, and so do men. Because it's not just about a check. It's about being connected to another being for the rest of your life.
Exactly.
And I'm not talking about the woman.
Well, I definitely think that, that we have to remember the fundamentals. The fundamentals are that babies are created from sex. So when you decide to lie down.
Really?
I know, people forget this a lot. It's been a while since we took the anatomy classes in high school and the sex education classes. But let me remind people, babies come from sex. So, one of the things that I remember realizing actually in my 30s was I said, it's interesting. Every time you lie down to have sex with anybody, even someone you don't know, you don't like, you are making an agreement to sign up for the baby making lottery. Mother Nature's lottery.
You really are.
Mother Nature's lottery. Like there are millions of people who walk into the room and lie down and get naked and have sex and swear they're not going to be the ones to make the baby. Think about this. About 95%, I bet you, of the people who lie down to have sex don't think that they're going to make a baby, yet these babies keep popping out. And that's just Mother Nature's trick. Look, come on in. The sex will be good. It won't happen to you. And then 9 months later, you're saying, how could this happen to me? So I tell people, look, if you don't want to lose the lottery, don't sign up for the lottery in the first place, or at least don't sign up in situations that are going to leave you vulnerable, because it does bite you in the butt. And ultimately, a young life is going to be affected for the worst. And we have to really think about that.
I think that's definitely. Yeah, and I think that's the takeaway point from this. When you decide to have an intimate relationship, with someone, a young life can be affected. Not just yours, but someone else. So when we look at the woman in this situation, she's crying tears for herself, but I also hope somewhere inside it's tears for her son too, who will never get to live with his father, never get to interact with his sisters in a way that's meaningful, and never get to have I don't want to say ideal situation, but the possibility of bonding with his whole family and having all of those components of his self-esteem and ego built because of this decision that his parents made when making him. And so that's my parting words. Those are my parting words, I should say, to really think about everything that you have to gain and lose every time you get into a physical contract with someone.
I think that's a great point. I think it's a great way to close out the show for today. I mean, at the end of the day, this little boy at the age of 4 officially has half of the family that he would have had if his parents had made better choices, and that's unfortunate. Well, thank you very much, Tia. It was wonderful talking to you today.
As always, and we're interested in hearing your thoughts. Excuse me. Please make sure to write us. Let us know what you're thinking about this topic, and stay tuned for the next installment of Financial Lovemaking.
Bye-bye.